Hi, I'm Robert Johnson, and I'm the location pastor here at Leewood, and one of your co-hosts for our Resurrection Stories podcast.
And I'm Angie McCarty, and I also serve as one of the pastors here. Welcome to Resurrection Stories, a podcast about hope, purpose, transformation, and service. Each week, you'll hear from a guest connected to Church of the Resurrection who's living out their faith in inspiring ways. Our hope is to expose our congregation and the Kansas City area to some of the amazing people who make up our church in a way that inspires you to live out your faith and make a positive impact in our community. As you listen to today's conversation, I invite you to share this podcast with others. You can do that by going to core.org/podcasts. Now let's welcome our guest for today's episode. Our guest for today is Jay Peach, who serves on our worship experiences team across all of our locations. You will learn that Jay is an incredibly passionate man who lives his life through grace, as evidenced in his family, in his position here at Resurrection, and he acknowledges that that has been with him since the very beginning of his life. Jay, thank you so much for being with us today and participating in this podcast.
It's an honor to be here.
Thanks.
It's great to have you here.
It's great to be here.
It's so much of a joy to be able to say that not only you, my colleague and my co-worker, but a friend.
Well, I consider you a friend too.
We don't have time to tell a story, but we spent some time together. I did my first mugging. So for those of you that don't know what mugging is, that's what we refer to. That's what we call when a person, a pastor or staff person, delivers a mug to a first-time guest. And so I did my first visit, and Jay took me along, and we did that. And he's just in the casual conversation spoke a beautiful word of healing for me in terms of my daughter to just filled my soul with so much grace. But that's another story, another podcast. Jay, tell us, how long have you been at Resurrection, and what do you do? What do you like most about what you do?
I just passed my 1-year anniversary at Resurrection. I've been a member of Resurrection for about 3 years. And I am on the worship experience team. That means that I help with communion and all the elements of worship, everything that happens inside of the sanctuary except for spoken word and music. All the peripherals are some of the things that I'm responsible for, greeters and ushers and that kind of thing.
And the number of details that your team has to think about each weekend,
oh my goodness,
I can't even fathom how you do it. You guys do an excellent job.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't feel like we hit all those details, but, we do what we can.
Yeah.
Somehow God has arranged, because Jenny Howell she has this map, and as an Enneagram 7, I might read 3 details.
And then forget them.
And forget them. But her map is about that. If you put it on a table, it's spread across this whole table. It's just everything, lights, and Jay's on that team, and I know she depends on you greatly.
Yeah.
I love being on that team.
Yeah, wow. You have good people on that team.
Yeah.
Jay, tell us about your faith story, and are there any turning points in it? If so, focus on those turning points and help us get to know you.
I've thought about that. Well, were there any specific? And I'm one of those people. There's not really specific moments that I can point to say that was a moment that changed my life. I mean, there are those rites of passage and all that, but there's not really a moment. My parents were Baptist missionaries, and so I grew up overseas, and I kind of grew up in the faith, so to speak. And there was at some point, I was baptized in a different tradition, not the Methodist church, but I was baptized in a Baptist church when I was in first grade. And have just kind of been raised. It's in my blood. It's in my DNA. I used to think that Baptist was in my DNA, but it's not.
DNA is bigger than that.
DNA is bigger than that. But I had a lot of spiritual formation, as most of us do in seminary. Those were some really formative years and experiences for me.
You've got to, as you tell your story, you've got to include, you spent some time, we talked about what's going on in Gaza right now with the war, and you actually spent how many years as part of your childhood there?
Yeah, I spent 8.5 years in Gaza. My little brother was actually born in Gaza back in the day. And I understand that Gaza is a different place than when I grew up, but it's really interesting and powerful to see images of places and things that kind of you recognize. And for example, there was a news story, and there was a particular hospital in Gaza that there was a rocket that they thought had fallen there, but really it had been something else. But there was a hole in the ground in this parking lot, and I remember sitting in that parking lot.
Wow.
As a kid, playing in a car, pretending I was driving the car.
Wow.
In that very spot.
Yeah.
So seeing those images really bring back some emotions, and it's interesting how that's gone.
One of the things I wish I could just shout from a mountaintop about the conflict that's happening now is that these are people in Gaza, that these are children, that that there's so many innocent people whose lives are just upended isn't the right word. There's no way that we can fathom just how
There's so much distraction.
Horrific their life is, and we wonder how it can rebuild. My heart just is filled with compassion for people, all people who live in war zones, but that is very personal, makes the conflict very personal. And
it makes it it's conflicting as well, because I've lived on both sides of that war. Because I graduated from high school in Jerusalem.
That's right.
And so I've kind of been in both of those, immersed in both of those situations on both sides.
Wow.
And what I can tell you from that is there's no simple answers. There's no easy answers. There's all we can do is what we can do. We can pray. And sometimes we've tossed that out there. Oh, we will pray for them.
Thoughts and prayers.
We really can.
Thoughts and prayers. So casual.
And we can, support refugees. We can do that. We can do what we can to build bridges just right here in Kansas City. There are synagogues and there are mosques here in Kansas City that maybe there's something that we could be
to support
doing.
them. Yeah. So, Jay, growing up, you went to high school in Jerusalem. How much of the Jewish culture and heritage did you learn and kind of live when you were there?
Well, I feel like I learned quite a bit. I didn't really, in a sense of, because I was living in Israel, I had to observe Jewish holidays and Christian holidays and often Muslim holidays. So if you think about all those holidays in the school year, our school year was usually longer than...
Heck, you went to school 2 days a year.
Right.
Wow, okay. But you were learning these
I was learning...
That is...
Yeah, I learned about that. But my life was a little bit insulated from that as well, because most of my friends and my family's community was very international. So like the high school that I went to, it was K through 12, and there were 300 kids in that school, K through 12. Wow. So my graduating class, 12 kids in that class, but also in that 300 kids, there were 33 nations represented.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was really a international kind of situation.
And you got along as a community.
For the most part.
Yeah. They're always going to be little. Yeah. But wow, what a wonderful foundation
great foundation.
Great
Yeah.
experience for me.
So your parents are missionaries. Do you remember? Do you remember a point at which? So you were raised in this faith family of faith. Parents are missionaries. As a matter of fact, you are living overseas because of that. Do you remember the moment, the time at which you embraced the faith for yourself? Was there a moment?
I don't remember that a defining moment like that.
Wow.
Do you?
No, I think and how I explain that I think is that we're all on a faith journey,
Yeah.
and some of our milestones are more poignant or more
Beautiful.
pronounced than others.
I love it.
And I don't have those big ones,
I love it.
and I got to be okay with that.
Yeah.
Oh, of course. Not everybody does. You went to seminary, American Baptist. You were an ordained.
I went to Southern Baptist. Seminary.
Okay.
And for a couple of years, and then I graduated from an American Baptist seminary.
And so what caused you to go into ministry?
Well, my wife,
Tell us about her.
she decided, she in college, she majored in psychology and sociology. And so her next step was to do social work. And there was only one seminary at that time that had a master's in social work, and that was Southern Seminary in Louisville. So we went there. And like I said before, those were some really formative years, and some of my views on things like social issues, LGBTQ plus, those kinds of issues, really formed in that setting for me. It was really difficult to see a person that was gay, a friend of mine. I'm a classmate or whatever, and there were people in their lives telling them that gay people can't be in ministry. And I'm here to tell you that those people's lives are making, since then, have made an enormous difference in other people's lives, because they followed their calling to be in social work and social ministry.
Yeah.
I don't know how we got there, but
No.
No. So you mentioned your wife. Tell us about the rest of your family.
So right now I have my wife Susan. She's living with cancer. She was diagnosed almost 7 years ago, and we've had lots of ups and downs with that. And she's pretty stable at the moment, so we're thankful for every day and every moment. I have 5 kids in high school, 1 in middle school, and then that's 6. And then I have a son that is a local entertainer here in Kansas City, and my oldest daughter works at Resurrection at our Brookside location.
I rarely meet someone who has more children than I do. I have 6. So when I first learned that you have 8, my impression of you and my regard for you went way, way up. What's it like to have that many people in your family and in your house right now, too?
It gets crowded from time to time. At one point, we were kind of outgrowing our house, and we couldn't find one that we could afford with enough bedrooms. So we ended up staying where we are and adding on and adding more bedrooms. So I think we're the only house in Merriam, Kansas that has 7 bedrooms.
Wow. That's awesome. Good for you.
Wow.
It's a lot, but it's also a lot of joy. When you say it's a lot of a lot of things. It's a lot of food on the table. It's a lot of laundry. It's a lot of noise around the house at night, during the day, all hours. There's always kids up roaming around. Just something you get used to, I suppose.
Yeah.
So one of the things I love about you, that I've noticed about you, is that, and I absolutely adore this about you. You refuse to discount or dismiss or put people in a box. Like, no matter where they are in life, no matter what their challenges are, you immediately go, there's grace for those. That's great. Like, that's just amazing. Particularly given that you carry such a load of caring for your wife, caring for your kids. You have a caring role around here in terms of details, and just what is that? Do you know how that came up? How you became that kind of person? Or was there? That's just who you are. You've always been that way.
I haven't really thought about that much, Robert, but
Okay.
I will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a great question to see.
Yeah.
I mean,
I will
certainly
think
you
about
had
that
that
some.
you had that example of caring and giving in your parents as missionaries, but
Also in seminary, in social work school, I mean, you kind of get that. You get a lot of that in modeling, in education. How does the life of Christ relate to a life in social work? And so, we looked at that in depth and quite a bit. So I think there's probably some of that.
Okay.
From
of
there.
course.
That's it. Talk about grace. Talk about, because it's just liberating the way you embrace people and affirm people, which is a very broad, deep understanding of grace. Have you conceptualized that at all?
I mean, we talk about and we sing about grace, and so often we kind of think of it and talk about it in sort of nebulous terms, ethereal sort of.
Yeah.
But if we can harness that and think of it in terms of this is how my life is what it is now because of the grace of God, because of the grace of others that have, I don't know, taught me or breathed their life-giving words or their wisdom. There's grace all around, and I can't. For me, I can't follow a God that doesn't accept everybody.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And God reveals
Thank you
God's
for
self
saying
to
that.
all
Yeah.
of us
Yes. Yes.
over time and over our concept of time. But God has revealed God's self to me as a God of grace.
I love it.
I'm wondering, as you talk about your family and your responsibilities and all of that, how do you show grace to yourself? How do you
Great question. Yes.
fill yourself?
So I really in college I trained as a musician. So I sing, and I've learned to play the guitar, and that's one thing that I do for myself. A couple of times a month, I help lead worship at our downtown location, and that feeds me.
Yeah. You and your wife together, right?
Together, yeah.
Would you say, what does that feel like when you and your wife? So you've said that's healing for you, that's therapeutic for you, it's empowering. What does it feel like to do that with her and to share that and to?
It makes those experiences complete.
Wow.
If I'm, because I have led worship here at Leawood without her,
Yeah.
and it's just not
That's it.
complete.
Wow.
I love that.
It's great, and it feeds me, but it's just not. It's this experience, and it's not that experience.
Yeah. How long have you been married?
37 years. Yes, I am old enough for that.
Right. You've gotten that look from people before. Yes.
I thought he was like 30. I'm like, how old are you? Like that?
I know, like
38,
how old?
35 years?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. It's
30-ish.
low 30s.
Okay. Yeah.
1988. Do the math.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, Jay, if you had to summarize your faith message that you would like to express to people, what would that be?
I love that question because it gives me an opportunity to preach my sermon.
Preach it.
I did have in seminary. I had a professor that he said that every preacher, every pastor has one sermon, and somehow that theme or that idea gets into every single sermon.
I believe that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my sermon is Jesus is in the mundane. Jesus is in everything. And I kind of go back to my childhood because at one point I lived in Bethlehem while my parents were in language school. And I just have these memories of walking through some of the fields around Bethlehem and smelling the sage in the air, the wild sage. And then I kind of go back, that takes me back to the two apostles the two men on the road to Emmaus, and I can see their feet walking down a rocky trail. I can smell what they're smelling, and when they get to Emmaus, they encounter Jesus.
Yeah.
But how do they encounter Jesus? In the bread.
Yeah. Wow.
In the meal, they encounter Christ.
Wow.
Jesus was in the mundane. Because the bread is mundane. It's an everyday thing. They make bread. You see now on TV, the people in Gaza making bread on fires.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the everyday. Jesus is there.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That's my message.
Yeah. I think that fits his life so well.
Oh,
because
without a doubt.
Like you don't separate here's the sacred stuff and here's the other stuff. It's all sacred to you, Jay, and you treat every person that way. Mm-hmm. I mean, like I'm a pastor, and I think I try to be. I mean, I'm a Wesleyan, I'm a Methodist, so grace is everything I do is supposed to be. But when I'm around Jay, it's like I find myself being judgmental about dynamics or about people or about situations, and his response is always great. So he sees how God's present in all of that. Jesus is in all the mundane stuff. So you can't
remind myself.
You can't write stuff off, or you can't write people off, because Jesus it's there. Yeah, I love that, Jay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Amazing. Jay, you're a fantastic person who is just filled with grace.
With
grace just emanates
Yes.
from you, and I love it. And we're so grateful that you're here today, but that you're on staff at Resurrection.
Me too.
And that we
I'm
get
really
to
glad.
hang out with you. Yeah. Yeah, I'm feeling a little self-conscious up here as the only one with hair. So.
It's okay. There's grace for
We'll let
everybody.
you
I
in the
know.
club. We'll let you in the club. Just let us know when. Let us know when.
Probably not.
So we've got to be praying. Angie, we're all excited for her in this new campus coming, this new location. I've got to get my resurrection language right. Location that she'll be leading, and so we know
That is really exciting
That's
stuff.
really exciting
really
stuff.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll drag you guys down there some way.
Okay. Well, I'll be down there. My job is church-wide,
All
so
over.
I I go to all the locations.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming here
I'm
today
glad to be here.
and for
you so
sharing
much. Thank you for the
yourself
invitation.
with us.
Thank you for sharing. It's great to have you.
And thank you for being here with us today. Don't forget to share this podcast with others by going to core.org/podcasts. We thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on our next episode.